Space is vast. It is an endless ocean of darkness. But even in this vast emptiness, there are whispers of wonder. One such whisper reached Earth in 2048. It was a signal. The signal came from beyond Jupiter, near the fiery moon Io. It wasn't random noise, it was a pattern. A repeating sequence of prime numbers. Prime numbers are building blocks of mathematics. They can't be divided evenly except by one and themselves. Their appearance in the signal could only mean one thing: intelligence. This was not a natural phenomenon. Someone or something was sending us a message. The world held its breath. Were we alone? We had always wondered. Now it seemed we might finally have an answer. The signal from Io was not just a discovery, it was an invitation. The eyes of humanity turned to the Artemis station, our outpost on the moon. Here the world's best minds gathered. They had one mission to answer the call from Io. Leading this mission was Commander Alina Myles. A veteran astronaut, Alina had seen more of space than almost anyone alive. She was known for her courage and her unwavering resolve.
I understood the gravity of the situation. This was more than just another mission. This was first contact. The future of humanity might very well depend on what we found beyond Io. The weight of that responsibility rested heavily on my shoulders.
The world watched with bated breath. The journey to Io would be long and perilous, but the promise of discovery was too great to ignore. Humanity had always looked up at the stars with wonder. Now it seemed the stars were looking back. The ship chosen for this momentous journey was the Odyssey. A marvel of engineering, it was the fastest and most advanced spacecraft ever built. It carried a crew of 3, each a specialist in their field. Joining Alina were Dr. Ren Okada, the mission's xenolinguist, and Chief Engineer Toma Vasquez.
My life had been dedicated to the study of language. Now, I would face the ultimate challenge, to understand a language not of this world.
Dr. Okada, a man of quiet intensity, was tasked with deciphering the alien message. Toma, on the other hand, was all boisterous energy. He knew the Odyssey inside and out.
I had an almost uncanny ability to feel the ship's moods. I treated her like a living thing. My expertise was crucial. The journey to Io would push the Odyssey to its limits.
The journey to Io would indeed push the Odyssey to its limits. As the Odyssey approached Io, the crew was met with an eerie silence. The signal that had drawn them here had vanished. All that remained was the hiss and crackle of static. The silence was unnerving. It felt heavy, almost predatory. It was as if they were being watched. The alien vessel came into view. It was a dark, angular structure, like a shard of obsidian against the fiery backdrop of Io. It dwarfed the Odyssey, its sheer size defying comprehension. There was no mistaking it. This was not a natural object. This was a creation of intelligence. A sense of awe and trepidation filled the hearts of the crew. They were on the verge of something momentous. They were about to meet their makers, or perhaps something far more unsettling.
I was fascinated by the signal. It wasn't just the prime numbers. There was an elegance to the sequence, a rhythm almost like music. I knew this was no accident. This was deliberate communication.
Dr. Okada spent days trying to decipher the message, running simulations and looking for patterns. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. The prime numbers weren't a message in themselves, they were a key to unlock something else.
I discovered that the prime numbers corresponded to pulses of energy within the signal. These pulses, when arranged correctly, formed a complex three-dimensional pattern. It was a map, and at the center of that map was the alien vessel orbiting Io.
The Odyssey docked with the alien vessel. The airlock hissed as it opened. The interior of the alien vessel was dark, filled with an eerie blue luminescence. Strange symbols like glowing glyphs adorned the walls. The silence was broken only by the hum of the Odyssey's life support systems and the sound of their own breathing. Every step felt like a violation, an intrusion into a sacred space. The air was thick with the weight of millennia, the silence heavy with unspoken stories. The glyphs pulsed with a faint light. They seemed to writhe and shift as the crew moved, casting flickering shadows on the walls. They were alive in a way. Not alive like a plant or animal, but alive with energy, with meaning. They were trying to communicate. As they ventured deeper into the vessel, they began to hear whispers. Faint at first, like the rustling of leaves, they grew louder with each step. The whispers seemed to emanate from the walls themselves, from the very fabric of the vessel.
I can feel them. They're trying to burrow into my thoughts. They're not words, not in any language I recognize, but they carry emotion, sorrow, regret, and a deep, abiding loneliness.
The whispers were a chorus of the fallen, a lament for a civilization long gone. They were a warning, a plea for understanding, and a desperate cry for help. They were a mystery that begged to be solved. The whispers led them to a central chamber. It was vast, larger than any structure on Earth. In the center, bathed in a blinding light, was a being unlike anything they had ever seen. It was humanoid in form, but seemed to be made of pure energy.
I am the custodian, the last of my kind. I have waited millennia for your arrival. I have sensed your curiosity, your potential for understanding. You carry the same spark that once burned bright in my own kind, a spark of hope in the face of oblivion.
The whispers had fallen silent, replaced by a profound stillness. The custodian spoke, its voice resonating deep within their minds, bypassing language entirely. It spoke of its purpose, its mission to safeguard a terrible knowledge. The custodian shared its knowledge. It spoke of a being of immense power, a devourer of stars, moving from galaxy to galaxy, consuming all in its path. It spoke of its own civilization, wiped out in an instant, leaving only ruins and echoes of what once was.
The whispers you heard were not just the voices of the fallen. They were a warning, a siren song echoing through the void. The devourer is coming, and Earth, with all its beauty and promise, is in its path.
The knowledge was a heavy burden, a terrifying truth. It was easier to believe in a universe of silence, of indifference. But the universe they now knew was far from indifferent. It was a place of wonder and terror, of creation and destruction, of life and death. The weight of the custodian's revelation hung heavy in the air. The fate of humanity rested on their shoulders. They could return to Earth, warn their people, and hope for the best. Or they could stay, learn from the custodian, and fight for their future.
The decision is unanimous. We will stay. We will become the custodians of the custodian's knowledge.
We will learn all we can, even if it means sacrificing our lives.
The devourer is coming, but humanity will not face it unprepared. We will fight for our right to exist, for our place in the universe.
They would inherit the legacy of a fallen civilization and carry its torch into the darkness. They were humanity's last hope, and they would not falter.